Hello everyone, this is Rig. Welcome to part 2 of the Early Vedic Age. This video has been made in accordance to the syllabus of ICSE or CISCE board class 6. However, if you are from any other board or if you are interested in history, you can go through these videos. And before starting this video, please carry a notebook with you so that you can note down the important points. Now, before we start with the part 2, let's have a recap of what we have already discussed in part 1. Now, part 1 had the origin of the Aryans. Where did the Aryans come from? We discussed an outdated theory regarding the origin of Aryans near Central Asia. After that, we discussed on what was the Vedic period and so on. We discussed what were the four main Vedas. After that, we have discussed about the other forms of literature in the Vedic period other than the Vedas. Then we have gone directly into the early Vedic period. What was the early Vedic period? What was the time range? What was the geographical location where people lived during the early Vedic times? All these things were discussed. Then we have discussed about the early settlements, how was the settlement pattern, and what kind of settlements did the Aryans have. Next, we have discussed about the family structure of the early Vedic people, where men were the eldest male member of the family was the head of the family. Then we have discussed about how women were respected in the society, how they were treated equally as men in the field of academics. Then we have talked about marriage, what was the appropriate age for marriage, what were the systems regarding marriage practices. We have also discussed about the dress and food, what kind of dresses the people used to wear and what kind of food they used to consume. So start with recreation. Now recreation, even though it may seem like a less important activity of any culture, but it is actually very important, because without recreation people will not be able to pass their time. Hence, there will be problems among themselves because of mental instability. So, recreation was one of the things which provided stability to the people. Aryans engaged in recreational activities like chariot racing and hunting. So, chariots are carriages or chariots are carts attached with the horses, and they used to race with the help of chariots. And also hunting was another important pastime for the Aryans. Music, dance, and gambling were popular pastimes. Other popular pastimes were to perform music and to play with musical instruments. Dance was also very much practiced during the early Vedic period. And gambling. Gambling means to bet something in order to win a game. So these things were also popular pastimes. That means music, dance, and gambling had their prevalence in the early Vedic period. Recreation was often a communal activity enhancing social bonds. Now, what was the purpose of recreation? The purpose of recreation was communal activity. Communal activity means many people used to do them together. It was not a private affair. And what was the purpose of many people doing it together? It activated the social bonds among the people. So, recreation was very much important for the Aryans with events like chariot racing and hunting. Music, dance, and gambling was also practiced by the people in the early Vedic times, and along with them, recreation was often a communal activity. Means many people in the community used to do it together. Verna system. Now, Verna system is one of the most misunderstood thing in the Indian religious theories. So, Varna system needs to be discussed in great detail, and we need to clear the misunderstandings regarding the Varna system. Society was divided into four Varnas, which means classes based on occupation. So, this was not hereditary in the early Vedic times, it was on the basis of occupation. Just like there are professors in the society, there are doctors, engineers, teachers in the society, soldiers are there. So, like that, Varna system was dividing the society on the basis of occupation. So, which were the divisions? Brahmins. The first class of division were the Brahmins. They were the priestly class. They performed religious rituals. So, Brahmins were the people who performed religious rituals. And like now, religion is not the most important activity of the people, but in early Vedic times religion was very much important for the people, and Brahmins used to handle all the affairs regarding religions. Hence they were the intermediaries or the connections between humans and gods. So Brahmins were placed in the highest standard of the society. Kshatriyas. Kshatriyas were the warrior class protected the society. So Kshatriyas were the warriors. By that time there were frequent attacks in the society, and also there were wars fought between different tribes in order to get some loot or in order to get some resources. So all these things were very important, and they were managed by the Kshatriyas who provided protection to the society. So they were the warrior class or the soldier class of people. Next came the Vaishyas. Vaishyas means merchants and farmers involved in trade and agriculture. Just like we have businessmen in today's societies, the same function was performed by the Vaishyas. Vaishyas means people who used to engage in trading activities. Shudras. Shudras was the lowest rank, and they served the upper classes. They were the lowest class and they served the upper classes. So they were basically workers in the society. Now, the misunderstanding is that from the beginning onwards, everyone was not treated equally. No, everyone was treated equally, and the society was divided on the basis of occupation. So, a son of Brahmin can become a Vaishya, or the son of a Shudra can become a Kshatriya. All these things used to happen. There was flexibility. So, the Varna system in the early Vedic period was flexible, and it was based on individuals occupation. Flexible means one can change the varna according to the occupation. So just like in today's societies, a doctor's son may not be a doctor. A doctor's son may be an engineer, or may be a teacher, or may be a businessman. So like that, there was flexibility in the early Vedic times also. So society was divided based on occupation, not based on the family you were born in. So that was one typical feature of Varna system in the early Vedic times. So please don't misunderstand this. Just like today's society has soldiers, the society of early Vedic people had Kshatriyas. Just like today's society has teachers, this society of early Vedic people had Brahmins. So, like that, society was on the basis of occupation. It was not on the basis of hereditary. Next up, we will discuss about the religious life. Now, religion was the most important uh, thing according to the early Vedic people. They used to have their beliefs in some kind of supreme power, and they used to worship that power. Aryans worship natural elements as gods, with major deities including Indra, the god of rain and water. In the early Vedic period, Indra was the god of rain and water, and it was the most important god of the early Vedic people. Now you can understand that rain and water are natural things, they are the natural elements. So all these natural elements were treated as gods and they were worshipped by the early Vedic people. The second most important god was Agni, which was the fire god. Agni, the fire god, had the second most number of hymns dedicated to him in the Rig Veda. What was the function of Agni? The function of Agni was to convey the wishes of people to the gods. That is why everything in Hindu ritual is done with the help of Agni or fire. Whatever you want to give, you give in the Agni, and it is believed that Agni transfers them to the gods. So, thus, Agni was the second most important god. Next came Varuna. Varuna means cosmic order, one who maintains balance in the universe. There should be a balance between creation and destruction. All these things were maintained by Varuna. Surya means sun god. People used to worship natural elements like sun, moon. So Surya was the sun god. Sun still is the source of life on earth, hence that must be worshipped. Vayu means wind god. Wind god means god of air. So wind is the life sustaining force in this world. Hence Vayu needs to be worshipped. And Yama means god of death. So death was one of the most feared activities by any people. Hence Yama used to be worshipped as the god of death. So all the natural phenomena that used to happen in the world were to be worshipped as deities or gods. Now there is a misunderstanding. People believe that Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwar, Durga, Kali, all these things, all these gods are also gods from the early Vedic period. No, they came much later. There was no existence of of Shiv or Durga Kali during the early Vedic times. Early Vedic times had 33 types of gods, and type, the word type in Sanskrit translates to koti. Therefore, there is a thing that Hindus have 33 koti gods, and koti translates to crore in English. So people think that there are 33 crores of God in Hindu culture, but no, that is not the fact. 33 koti means 33 types of gods, and these gods like Indra, Agni, Varuna, Surya, Vayu, Yama, Prithvi, Dhruyu, all these gods are important gods of the early Vedic time, and they are among those 33 types of gods. Vedic hymns were chanted in open air, and yajnas were central to religious practices. The people in the Vedic times believed that you cannot get anything from the god unless you offer something, and that offering was in the form of sacrifices. So, Vedic hymns were chanted in open air, and sacrificial rituals were practiced, which was very much important for the Vedic people. Polytheistic beliefs reflected the Aryans' reverence for nature. So, polytheistic beliefs means there was not one single power which the Aryans worshipped. They used to worship in multiple forces of nature, and from that we come to know about the reverence or respect of Aryans for the natural elements. Thus, gods were actually natural elements which were worshipped by the Aryans or the early Vedic people. Economic life. What kind of economic life was there, what kind of economy was there in the early Vedic times, and how did the people sustain themselves. So cattle rearing was the most important form of economy. People during the early Vedic times did not practice a much of agriculture. They practiced cattle rearing as their primary activity. Pastoral economy. Cattle rearing means pastoral economy. And in pastoral economy, cattle were considered wealth. So the wealth was in the form of cattle. That was the main thing in pastoral economy. Frequent prayers in Rig Veda highlight the importance of cattle. In Rig Veda, the primary thing is cattle, and there are frequent prayers dedicated to the cattle, and that highlight the importance of cattle in the life of the Rig Vedic people. So, economy was mainly pastoral. Pastoral means cattle were considered wealth, and every kind of human activity centered around the cattle or animals. Agriculture. Next came agriculture. Agriculture was not the primary activity, it was the secondary activity. And what kind of agriculture used to happen? They practiced farmings using wooden plows. Plows are the instruments through which soil is dug, and wooden plows are the least effective of the plows. They do not work properly. Hence, digging of soil was not done properly. Therefore, agricultural productivity was very low during the Rig Vedic times. Hence, even though there was agriculture, it was in a minimum amount because of the use of ineffective equipments like wooden plows. Knowledge of seasonal cycles supported the agricultural activities. Means people had knowledge of the seasonal cycles. When the monsoon used to come, when summer used to happen, when winter used to come, all these things people knew about. They could predict or they could calculate that after this there will be rain. So all these things means there were knowledge of seasonal cycles, and because of having this knowledge, they could practice different kinds of agricultural activities. Crafts activity were also there during the early Vedic times. So crafts skilled in crafts like carpentry, pottery, weaving and metal work. So all these things used to happen. People cannot live their life without crafts activity. You may think that crafts activity is a recreation or entertainment or luxury, but no. Carpentry, pottery, weaving and metal work are also kinds of crafts. So there were people who used to do these works properly, and thus crafts were also practiced in the Rig Vedic times. There were artisans means artists who used to perform craft activities. So artisans were there, and what were their jobs? Their jobs were like chariot making, leather working, and they were important parts of the society. So, chariot making and leather working was also done in the society. Hence, there was a multicultural economic life with pastoral activities at the prime, and agricultural activities came after that, along with several crafts activities like carpentry, pottery, weaving, metalwork, chariot making, and leather works, which supported people to have a balanced economic life. Next up, we will discuss about the political life. How was the politics during the early Vedic period, and how did the people balance the politics to manage themselves? Now, society was organized around tribal units with a Rajan as the head. So, Rajan was the head of the society. Rajan later on came to be translated as Raja, which is king. And head of the society means head of the tribe. The main bonding of the society, or the basis on which a society was formed, is the tribal basis. Tribal basis means different kinds of families having some kind of lineal ties and also some kind of cultural ties lived together, and they elected a head called Rajan. Political authority was mostly based on kinship and clan loyalty. So the authority mainly depended on kinship. Kinship means relationship, blood relationships between people, and also loyalty to the clan. So there were a clan member must be loyal to the clan in order to survive, and that later on translated to having political authority, and that was based on relationship between people. Villages were led by Graminis and clans by Vishvatis. So, clans basically translates to Vish in Sanskrit. So, the head of clans were Vishpatis, and inside a clan there were different villages, and those villages were led by people called Graminis. So, Graminis were the head of grams or villages, and Vishpatis were the head of Vish or clans. Different grams together made a wish, means different villages together made a clan, and different clans together made a tribe, which of which Rajan was the head. Jana, or the tribal community, was ruled by the king who had limited powers. So Jana means tribal community. So the first stage is gram. Different grams combine together to make a wish, which is clan, and different wish combine together to make a jana, which is governed by the king. And jana basically means tribal community. Kingship was not hereditary, and leaders were often chosen based on merit. So, kingship was not hereditary, means son of a king was not to be a king, and the kingship was mainly based on the basis of merit, means one who was most capable became the king, and thus we get a hint of democracy, means where rulers are elected by the people, where leaders are elected by the people. So we get a hint of democracy during the early Vedic times, where kingship was not hereditary, it was based completely on merit, means one who was the most capable became the leader. Now, who are the important officers of the early Vedic people? Now, society was not that much organized during the Rig Vedic time. Hence, we get names of very few officers. King had advisors and officials to assist in governance. A king cannot rule alone unless he gets help from some people, and those help came in the form of advisors and officials who used to assist the king in the management or governance. Purohit. Purohit was the chief priest who advised the king on religious matters. So, who was the Purohit? Purohit was the chief priest, means the head of the Brahmins was the Purohit, and that Purohit advised the king on religious matters. Okay, so all kind of religious matters were dealt by the Brahmins, and for the king also religion was very important. Hence, the Purohit was the head of religious matters. Senani. Senani was the commander in chief who led the army. So, the commander in chief was the Senani, and he was the head of the Kshatriyas, means one who led the army. Rajya. Rajya means kingdom, relied on various officers for smooth administration. So, the kingdom depended on various kinds of officers in order to run smoothly. So, that was the function of important officers in the governance. Now, what were the important assemblies in the Rig Vedic period? Assembly here means gathering of people in order to take a major decision concerning the society, or in order to see how the society will run. People used to gather themselves. Just like today, we have the parliament or different kinds of administrative gatherings. Similar things used to happen in the Rig Vedic period also. So people used to gather in one place and decided what is best for them. So that was the function of assemblies. What were the assemblies? Two important assemblies were the Sabha and Samiti. So Sabha and Samiti were the two most important assemblies of the Rig Vedic period. Sabha means council of elders who advised the kings and handled legal matters. Handle legal matters means they were functioning as a court also. So Sabha was the council of elderly people, and they were the advisors of the king. If the king wanted to know about something, or if the king had conflicting opinions, then the king used to consult the Sabha before taking a proper decision. Samiti. Samiti was the general assembly of the people, and they had legislative powers. Means it was the law making body, and it was not the assembly of elders. Samiti was the assembly of all people. All the people could come in the Samiti, and they could make laws regarding how to govern a state. Women could participate in assemblies, signifying a relatively inclusive society. So it was not that only males participated in these assemblies, they were equally participated by women, and they also played an important part on how to make laws. Assemblies acted as checks on royal power and were central to decision making. So the king could not do whatever he wanted. And to prevent autocracy, or to prevent the king from doing everything according to his own wish, assemblies were formed. And because of the assemblies, the king had to check his power. Means if the king did something wrong, he was answerable to the assemblies, means he was answerable to the Sabha and Samiti. And sometimes there were also instances when Sabha or Samiti could change the king. And one other important information regarding assembly is that there was another form of assembly called Vidhata. And Vidhata was the assembly where only women could participate. So it was a form of women only assembly. Thus, Sabha, Samiti, and Vidhata, three were the most important organizations who were deeply concerned about the functioning of the kingdom. Now we will discuss about the important question and answers which may come in the exam and which will help you to understand this chapter better. Who were the Aryans and where did they come from? So who were the Aryans and where did they originate from? The Aryans were a group of people who migrated to ancient India around 1500 BC. They are believed to have come from Central Asia, although other theories suggest regions like Caucasus or indigenous origins within India. What are the two main periods of the Vedic age? The Vedic age is divided into two periods: the early Vedic period, which is 1500 to 1000 BC, and the later Vedic period, which is 1000 to 500 BC. Name the four Vedas and briefly describe their contents. The four Vedas are Rigved, hymns dedicated to various gods; Samved, melodies and chants used in rituals; Yajurved, instructions for performing rituals; Atharvaved, spells, charms, and philosophical ideas. What was the primary source of wealth for Aryans during the early Vedic period? Cattle was the primary source of wealth for Aryans. They practiced cattle rearing, which was central to their economy and social status. Describe the family structure of the Aryans in the early Vedic period. The Aryan family structure was patriarchal, with eldest male serving as the head of the family, called Grihapati. Families were often joint with several generations living together. What was the Verna system and how did it organize society? The Verna system divided the society into four classes or Varnas based on occupation: Brahmins, priests; Kshatriyas, warriors; Vaishyas, farmers and merchants; Shudras, servants and laborers. This system was flexible initially but later became rigid. Name two important assemblies during the early Vedic period and explain their roles. The two important assemblies were Sabha, a council of elders that advised the king; Samiti, a general assembly of people involved in decision making and governance. What role did women play in the early Vedic society? Women were respected and had a significant role in society. They were educated, participated in religious ceremonies, and some even composed hymns. Women also had the right to choose their husbands through Swayamvar ceremonies. What types of food were common in the early Vedic period? The Aryans ate a variety of foods, including grain like barley, dairy products, meat, fruits, and vegetables. They also drank beverages like soma and sura. Describe the religious practices of the Aryans during the early Vedic period. The Aryans practiced a polytheistic religion, worshipping natural elements as gods. Major deities included Indra, rain and war god; Agni, fire god; Varuna, god of cosmic order. Sacrifices or yajnas were central to their religious practices. So that was all about the early Vedic period. Please go through the part 1 of this video before going through the part 2. And if you have any doubts, you can post it in comments. I will be happy to answer. Thank you so much for your love and support.